by Kathy Ashford. Chapter 10. I woke up nervous. Ever since Charlie had appeared at the manor, I'd been excited. Excited about going to the capital, pleased to be not just a lord's heir, and somehow relieved by the diagnosis that I was Niathi blood. Everything had moved so fast, and ever since we had been in Lille, I had been kept too busy to be apprehensive about what studying at the academy would entail. Now it was finally upon me, I was nervous. I wasn't stupid. The tutors at home had schooled me diligently and commented that I was an intelligent boy, but learning about Hjaven, magic, completely different story. After bathing and dressing in my linen robe, still fresh and clean after the weekend, we went to breakfast in the common room. There was an air of quiet anxiety among the humans as we ate our bacon and eggs with toast and drank our mugs of hot coffee. Afterwards, in my room, I gathered my pen and one of the blank journals, and Charlie and I went to meet the others in the hall's reception so we could all walk to the academy together. Telgith and Thomas were the last to join us, Thomas almost pushing Telgith down the stairs as he tried to flatten his sleep-mussed hair. Eve popped her head around the door and wished us a good morning, informing us that lunch would be ready back at the hall in the midday break between classes. We shuffled a bit, all of us wearing our robes, except Sutter, of course, and carrying books and pens. Lalitha had lined her eyes with kohl again and stared defiantly at Sella, who pretended to ignore her. Jimmy broke the tension by flinging open the front door of the hall, and he led us out into the lane. We turned right at the end, away from the quarter, and down the street that led to the jetty we had used the day before, but we turned left before we got to the lake, onto a surprisingly wide, tree-lined avenue. The buildings on either side were no longer built from the dark, light-absorbing stone of the Niathi Quarter, but the paler grey slate that glittered with tiny crystals that was native to the Lille region. At the end of the avenue was a wide quadrangle of grass, peppered with mature plane trees, offering moments of respite from the glare of the morning sun. 3 sides of the quad were flanked with imposing buildings, each with 4 stories of arched windows. Stone gargoyles peeked from corners as Jimmy guided us unhesitatingly through the great wooden doors of the Milder building and into the academy, its parquet floors smoothed by the passage of 6 centuries' worth of foot traffic. Inside, we were met by Mer Roderick and a smaller Niathi man, who appeared to be in his late middle age. I did some quick calculations in my head and figured that would make him about 150 years old. I shook my head in wonder at the thought. "Welcome, Bloodkin and mentors, to the little academy," Mer Roderick announced brightly when we had all shuffled inside. "This is Brilliatcha Thailwan of the Chanyo Enclave, or Mer Billy for the humans." I noted the man's colouring, the greenish tint to his grey skin and the violet-red eyes. He smiled and nodded, examining each one of us with his big eyes, then went round introducing himself, shaking our hands gravely. He was smallish for a Niathi, with a round, smooth face and kindly eyes, and he smiled at each of the mentors he had worked with before with a pleased welcome back. "I thought perhaps we would start with a tour of the academy before you begin your classes. Come." Mer Roderick led the way back out through the door and onto the quad. He pointed out the wing of the academy to the left, closest to the lake, and explained that this was where the temple oversaw the training of solists, psychotherapists, and psychosolists. Behind the wing we could see the spire of a large temple that was, like the temple in Nello, a remnant of the time before the leavening, and had been converted. A human male, not much older than us I guessed, with longish black hair and weirdly pale eyes, dressed in the blue robes edged with white that marked him as a solist, waved and hurried over. "Hey, Jimmy, this the new intake? Not interrupting, am I, Murad?" He grinned cheekily. "Hayum, how goes the study? Everyone, this is Hayum, my last Bloodkin. He's trained to be a solist." Jimmy beamed proudly. Hayum glanced over us Bloodkin, a flicker of recognition registering on his face when he saw Mantley. Yes, just giving the new recruits a tour of the academy before we begin. It's their first day, you know. Mayor Roderick shook the man's hand warmly. Better leave you to it then. Good luck, kids. You'll need it. He laughed and dashed back to the solace wing after giving Jimmy a brief hug. Oh my, he's from Nello, I heard Mantley whisper to Sella. He was 2 years above me at school. I heard he bit the head off a rabbit once. Sella shuddered delicately. Yes, well, the temple wing has lectures and tutorial rooms, as well as being a working hospital. So if any of you fall ill, I expect you to go straight there. Mayor Roderick shook a finger at us sternly. The other wing, on the north side of the quad, housed the studies of history and law. The ground floor held the main library of the academy. Mayor Roderick led us back inside the main doors, pointing out the hallway that led to the administrative offices. Up the stairs, the second floor was for the science department, and we climbed another flight of stairs to the third floor. That was to be where we studied. Mayor Roderick pointed up the last lot of the stairs. The lecturers have their offices up on the top floor. Please, feel free to go and ask any of them if you have any questions. My own office is on the ground floor, he smiled ruefully, in consideration for my poor aching joints. The mentors laughed. Mayor Roderick seemed as sprightly as a much younger man. Come, I'll show you where you'll be spending the next 2 years. And he pushed through a door to the side of the landing. Our study area was a huge, long space that must have taken up the whole floor. Fireplaces dotted one wall, while on the other we could look through the arched windows out into the quad below. Here, as elsewhere around the academy, there were the usual Neathi globes, set in sconces along the walls and hanging from the roof. The near half of the room had writing desks and marble-top workbenches, like the ones in my room, facing a big blackboard and large teaching desk. Down the far end there were couches and bookcases, for relaxing in our breaks. There was a clear space in between, but lined up along the wall were odd little floor seats, folded up with a stack of cushions and blankets. What they were for I could only guess. Mayor Billy was standing at the front, shuffling papers as we came in, and he gestured for us to take seats at the writing desks facing him, our mentors perching on stools beside us. I will leave you now in the capable hands of Mayor Billy. If you need anything, my office is downstairs. And with that, Mayor Roderick was gone, shutting the door carefully behind him. Right, people. Get out your writing equipment. The first thing I want to go over are the rules. The rules? Up until now, Lil had seemed like a place of freedom, especially compared to the regimented lifestyle I had had at home. Now there were going to be rules. Of course. I sighed and opened my journal to the first page, readying my pen. The most important rule for Neathi Bloods at this academy is that you must not, under any circumstances, use Hyavan without permission from your lecturer and the supervision of your mentor. Mobility stood and wrote Hyavan on the board in chalk. The Neathi characters were odd, and it didn't really look like how it was pronounced at all. I copied the word into my journal and wrote beside it, "Not without Charlie." Secondly, at the end of your 2 years here at the academy, you will be tested by a board of examiners. If we feel you have mastered your Hyavan to our satisfaction, you will be free to pursue whatever career you wish. If, however, you do not fulfill our requirements, you will be assigned another mentor and will be required to complete another 2 years of study here until we are satisfied that you are not a danger to the public. Shit, I didn't know that. I hadn't realised you could fail and have to stay at the academy indefinitely. Mobility looked around from the blackboard and saw our startled faces. Oh, don't worry. We haven't had to keep anyone back for another course for many, many years. I'm sure your mentors will be doing everything in their powers to make sure you pass. It is their job, you know. He waggled his eyebrows and the mentors smiled and nodded at him. They will not be coming with you to class every day, but your lecturer will let you know beforehand when they are required. Thirdly, beginning tomorrow, every day here at the academy will begin with half an hour of meditation. You are expected to continue this by yourself at the weekends and during holidays. Without it, you will not be able to control your Hjaven, and you will fail your examinations. Meditation? Really? This place was getting weirder and weirder. Right then. Billy clapped his hands together, sprinkling chalk dust down his robe that slid off instantly and settled on the floor. Seeing as this is your first day, I think we should start with something easy. Now, you are not required to learn the Neethi language. Oh, no, he chortled. But it is fitting that you have a rudimentary grasp of pronunciation in the alphabet. We will start with a word that is central to your study here. One that you have no doubt heard a number of times, but may not have seen written down before. He tapped the blackboard where it had written Hjaven. Now, Neethi is a musical language. The cadence of the syllables can affect the meaning. See here, he wrote out the first two letters, Hja. The accent, as you would call it, on top of the A, indicates that the vowel should be rounded with a Y sound before it. The direction of the accent indicates the cadence. A is a Ya sound sung from low to high. Ya is high to low. Try them both now. I'd been scribbling in my journal, and Charlie pointed out the A, Ya, which I tried to pronounce, then the Ya. He smiled and nodded. Close enough. Billy listened, and when he was satisfied, he wrote a V beside the Hja. This is, of course, pronounced V. Next is the E, close enough to the human that you need not bother with it too much. If there is no accent on a vowel, you pronounce it flat. He inscribed the last letter. The N is a long N sound, obviously, but the sound is formed with the tongue lifted slightly from the roof of the mouth. Right, now, there is the whole word. Please, practice it now. I turned to Charlie, who grinned encouragingly. Although I had heard it spoken many times, saying it out loud yourself was quite different. Hjaven. Not bad. But remember the Y sound after the H, and the cadence is high to low. Hjaven. Better. Hold on to the N for longer at the end, and make the rise of the more pronounced. Hjaven. Huh. Very good, old chap. Say it a few more times for practice. At the other desks, everyone else was struggling to say the word. Most had got it by the third or fourth try and were muttering it to practice, rolling the unfamiliar sounds around their mouths. Billy waited until we turned back to the front and wrote 3 words on the board. Chanyo, Hyayo, Vio. Now, could anyone guess what these are? I had an inkling, but Dunkel stuck up his hand. Yes? Dunkel, is it? Yes, sir. Are they the names of the enclaves? Very good, boy. Yes, these are the written names of the 3 Neethi enclaves. Now, we have a number of small villages which you will learn about in your classes on Neethi lifestyle and culture, but these are the 3 main cities, if you will. You may have noticed these words spoken when you meet your mentors and any other Neethi you have come across. There are slight physiological differences in the Neethi from the different enclaves that you may have noticed, mostly in our skin and eye colour. Write these down now, and your mentors will help you with the pronunciation. I wrote the 3 enclaves down in my book and looked at Charlie expectantly. I was pretty sure Vio was Charlie's home enclave. I had heard them say the word a number of times. The first letter looked like the capital version of the character for the V sound in Hjaven, so I gave it a go. Vio? Pretty good. But see the accent on the That means there's a U sound before it, and it's sung high to low. Vio, I said, intoning the cadence of the last syllable. Charlie grinned as I got it. We worked through the other enclaves. Hyayo was easy enough. Sounded like Hyayo, with the first and last syllables sung from high to yo. Chanyo was pronounced Chanyo, but I struggled a bit with the first consonant. See, the character that It's pronounced a bit like ch, but with a bit of a sound as well. A bit more guttural even. Like the sound at the end of Samok, see? The proper Niathi pronunciation of little bitch ends with a Charlie explained. Then Merbilly had her mentors write out their names in Niathi and helped us pronounce them. Charlie borrowed my pen and wrote for me Kaislech of Leshka. Okay, so the at the start, it's like the human hard C sound, but with a H rounding after it, more like KH, see? That weird thing that looks like H in the middle is sort of a sh, but you keep your tongue wide. Is a long L sound, and that squiggle was like a double S. I practiced it with the right cadences until I had got it to Charlie's satisfaction. Kaislechka, Vleshka, with that odd-sounding CZ that had to be forced gutturally from the back of my throat. After a time of murmured practice from the group, Merbilly clapped his hands. Lovely, lovely. That's a good start. I think we deserve a break, He motioned for us to leave our desks and follow him to the far end of the room. We sat on the couches and he indicated to a huge metal jug sitting in a ceramic plinth. Would anyone care for coffee? Who wants to do the honours? Thomas stepped forward and stared at the jug until, remarkably, steam began to rise from the spout, and the smell of freshly brewed coffee filled the room. Merbilly opened a cupboard set into the base of one of the bookcases and pulled out 17 mugs, placing them on a table, into which Thomas poured coffee from the jug. Milk, anyone? Sugar? Merbilly passed around a bowl and a small jug of milk, and we relaxed into the couches. When we were all sipping quietly, he sat forward in his seat and addressed us. This is how your days at the academy will be. We have meditation first thing. Talgoth groaned and Merbilly looked at him sternly. It's very important, you know. You have to be able to close your mind from distractions to be able to use Hyavan. Meditation provides the mental clarity you will all require. All your mentors meditate daily, I'm sure. I glanced at Charlie, who shrugged. I'd never seen him meditate before. He leaned over and whispered, What do you think I do every morning while I'm waiting for you to wake up? Well, that explained it then. He had always seemed to be awake before me. So, after meditation, we will have lectures all morning with a break in the middle. Then, I believe you go back to your hall for lunch. In the afternoon, we will have a practical session, often based on what you have learned in the morning. He waved towards the marble workbenches. We have another break in the middle, and we will finish up here late afternoon, when you will return to the hall to complete your assigned homework. Talgoth made a rude noise, but this time Merbilly ignored him. Later on in the year, you will have guest lecturers to teach you about their specialist fields. Professors of biology, chemistry and physics, horticulture, history and law, as well as lecturers from the temple, who will give you an introduction to solistry. These all being applicable to your use of Hyavan. For now, though, we'll stick to the basics, yes? We all nodded. I was wide-eyed and feeling a bit overwhelmed. Right, is everyone finished? Good. Just leave your mugs on the table. A journeyman will come during the lunch break to take care of them for us. He grinned, his face creasing. Come now, back to your desks. Once we had all been seated again and facing him, Merbilly rubbed out the words on the blackboard and wrote Hyavan again, in large letters, underlining it firmly. Now you know how to pronounce it properly. I want to give you a quick introduction to the evolution and use of Hyavan. Please, feel free to take notes. My hand flew across the page as he spoke, concentrating so hard on writing that I hardly had time to take in what he was saying. The early Niathi tribes had moved up into this area some 300,000 years ago, where they evolved into large, strong creatures with pale skin and light hair suiting the northern climate. Merbilly looked around the room appreciatively, his eyes lingering on Lalitha. See, with the exception of this lass here, Lalitha, is it? Yes, you all have blonde or auburn hair that is evidence of your Niathi genetic heritage. I looked around and realised he was right. We did all have fair-ish hair, from Dunkel's pale blonde spikes to Talga's orange mop. Aletha dear, you have some southern blood in you, perhaps? She blushed and ran a hand self-consciously through her black bob. Yeah, my mother's grandfather was from Yule. Well, that explains it then, Merbilly continued. With their large craniums, the early Neathi civilization discovered and mastered the use of Hyavan, living well in tribal systems with a rudimentary culture and language. Humans evolved separately in their homeland far to the south, but around 50,000 years ago had begun to encroach on Neathi territory. All this is hypothetical, of course, Merbilly admitted. Our written history begins long after we moved into the enclaves. He sighed and waved his hands apologetically, disappointed by this lack of firm evidence. Humans and Neathi had a tenuous coexistence, but the humans' smaller size and lesser dietary requirements meant that their numbers increased to the point where they began to crowd out the Neathi tribes. There was a degree of interbreeding, of course, and the resulting offspring passed on to their children the ability to use Hyavan, though the primitive human culture did not foster or teach them how to use it. By around 40,000 years ago, the situation had become precarious for the Neathi. The warlike traits of the humans had driven them nearly to extinction. The remaining Neathi tribes had discovered entrances to underground tunnel systems that led far beneath the Rye Mountains that encircled the area, and they began to build habitations where they could escape human tribes and enjoy the thermal heat provided by deep underground vents. During the summers, they would emerge and stockpile food, trying all the while to avoid incursions by groups of predatory humans. After some 20,000 years, perhaps, of this semi-subterranean lifestyle, the humans on the surface had become so populous that leaving the enclaves during the summer was simply too dangerous. By this time, the Neathi had tunneled further under the mountains, assisted by Hyavan. 3 huge natural caverns had been discovered, all with an abundance of water and luminous algae, and deep enough to be warm all year round. Habitations were built and hydroponic systems were set up, growing food crops modified using a combination of selective breeding and Hyavan to adapt them to underground cultivation. The Neathi diet was supplemented by farmed subterranean fishes, and now they could exist without having to go outside. The entire Neathi population moved to these new enclaves and sealed off the entrances. They soon realized that the genetic oddity of albinism that throws itself up on occasion was actually suited to their new underground lifestyle, and Neathi albinos were encouraged to breed, as it were. Advances in genetic tweaking with Hyavan meant that after a few thousand years in the enclaves, the Neathi people all had the red eyes, grey skin, and colourless hair that they had to this day. Our particular form of albinism is recessive, however. That's why Mingles often inherit the colouring of their human parent. We don't have any Mingles in this class, do we? Merbilly looked around the room. No? Oh well, no matter. Hey, Merbilly, called Talgoth. Merbilly squinted a little to see who had spoken. Talgoth, yes? You have a question? Good. Please, anyone, if you need clarification, please just ask, but raise your hand so I know whom I am speaking to. Talgoth raised his hand. Merbilly, so, can Mingles be Neathi blood too? Good question, Talgoth. The short answer is no. Mingles are people of mixed human and Neathi heritage, the result of unions that have occurred since the leaving. Neathi blood such as yourself have Neathi DNA from interbreeding between the two species before the Neathi went underground. You understand the concept of DNA? Don't worry. Mer Stewart will teach you more about genetics and evolution later on in the year. Anyway, Neathi bloods and Mingles are the 2 types of non-Neathi that can use Hyavan. Bloodkin is the term for any student of Hyavan studying at the academy with the aid of a mentor. It caught on in the early days of the academy after the leaving. I believe the kin does not refer to any ties of kinship as such. Rather, it's merely a term of affection, like Munchkin, perhaps, seeing as Neathi blood is such a mouthful. Does that answer your question? Yeah, pretty much. What's a munchkin? Merbilly stared at Talgoth for a long moment, gauging whether the question was a joke. Apparently he decided it was, because he scratched his head for a second and continued. Now, where was I? Oh, right. The enclaves developed in relative isolation from each other, what with the rather large distances between them. Tunnels were eventually carved to link them, and not long before the leaving, steam carriage tracks were laid, but travelling between the enclaves used to take months. He pulled down a rolled map to the side of the blackboard. It was a map unlike any I had ever seen before. It still had, most of the topographical features of the country, but extended out to encompass their surrounding mountain ranges that regular maps didn't bother with. The 4 capitals were still marked, each with a little crown, but most of the roads and other towns had been left off. Instead, there were 3 large stars, each over areas of high mountain that held no human habitations, as well as a number of smaller stars and circles, linked with a series of blue lines. This is a map of the underground. These lines are the highway tunnels, the small stars are Neathi villages, the circles are entrances to the tunnel network, and these are the enclaves. He pointed at one, nestled in the mountain range far to the north of Vesturg. This is Hyayo. Any of the mentors here from Hyayo? Sarah and Richard held up their hands. Good. Now, come up to the front so we can have a look at you. Merbilly turned to the rest of us. See, as I was explaining, the enclaves developed with a great degree of separation, so there are slight differences in colouring between Neathi from the different enclaves, mainly because of the nature of the particular strain of algae native to the area. See, Sarah and Richard here, I'll use your human-friendly names if you don't mind, are excellent examples of Hyayo colouring. Note the slight orange hue of their eyes and purple tint of their skin. Richard pulled up one sleeve of his robe and flexed his arm, much to Sarah's amusement. The 2 mentors apparently unfazed at being put on display in front of the whole class. Thank you. You may take your seats now. Merbilly turned back to the map, pointing out the large star to the east and north of Lil. This is Chanyu, our local enclave, if you will. Who are our Chanyu natives? Thomas, Emma, and James obediently stood. See here the violet eyes and greenish skin? Yes, thank you. They sat, and he pointed to the last big star, far to the south of Fortesta and slightly west. And this is Vio. Charlie and Jimmy stood without having to be prompted. You will of course note the bluish skin and red eyes. Who's left? Adam, is it? Yes. Stand up. Now, where are you from? I grew up in the village of Hyalchol and was educated in Chanyu, where my mother's from, but my father was from Vio. They met when they were journeymen. Oh, how nice. Come, would you show us the location of Hyalchol? Adam borrowed Merbilly's pointer and indicated one of the smaller stars on the map, not far from Chanyu, and close to the circle that marked the tunnel entrance just east of Lil, near the beginning of the Jail's Head Valley. Very good, yes. Now, you will see that Adam's colouring is a mix of Chanyu and Vio. Slightly violet eyes and greenish-blue skin. Adam grinned at us as Merbilly took the pointer back and waved him to sit down. This, of course, is the main entrance to the underground system for Lil. He tapped the circle by Adam's village. This is the one the Chanyu regiment used during the leaving, and the one we used to bring out the stone during the construction of the Neathi quarter. He pulled a string on the bottom of the map and it rolled back up. Well, I think we've done enough writing for one morning, and I'm definitely feeling a bit peckish. Go and have your lunch now. This afternoon we'll discuss Yavin some more and maybe try a few practical exercises. What do you think? I gulped, nervous again. We were actually going to try and use Yavin. I was going to set the academy on fire. Good, yes. Oh, and before you go, you've all got the required text, yes? Good. Well, your reading for tonight is the first 2 chapters of Introduction to Yavin. Yes, write that down. and the section on the leaving in Thuy Huen's Guide to Human Neathy Relations. Right, off with you then. Give my regards to Yevgenia. He swept out of the room, the first speedy movements we had seen him make all day, leaving us to trail in his wake. Out on the landing, he darted upstairs to his office. Jimmy ducked ahead as we filed down the stairs. "I'll run on ahead and let Yevgenia know we're on our way," and he raced off. The rest of us followed rather more sedately, out the door and across the quad to the avenue that would take us back to the hall and our lunch. End of chapter 10!